Welcome to the People Planet Profit podcast. I'm Hayley Jarick, CEO of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and today I'm joined by Filomena Beshara. So welcome, Filomena.
Thank you, Hayley. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm going to kick off by getting you to quickly introduce yourself for people who don't know you already.
Yeah, sounds good. My name is Filomena. I am a sustainability manager at Built, and I work on numerous project and strategy initiatives at Built. And I'm really glad to be part of this conversation with Hayley today.
Excellent. So I'm going to so obviously working in the construction industry, working in the built environment, we've done a few things together through Built and sort of seeing what you're doing in the place. But I think that one thing that stands out is around this concept of adaptive reuse. So I was wondering if you can tell us a bit more about what it is, what you've done in this area, and some funky things that you think people will be interested in.
Yes, absolutely. So at Built, we're trying to be champions about adaptive reuse, and there are a few reasons for it. I think that it all really started with Substation 164, which is our headquarters in Sydney. If you're passing by or if you're in Sydney, please come and check it out. It's a beautiful building. It's two heritage listed buildings that, as the word says, have been adaptively reused to be something else, which is a vibrant commercial space. And at Built, we really believe in these kind of projects, and we want to do more of those. So obviously, there are a couple of reasons behind it, and definitely circularity is one of that, but also embodied carbon. So when you adaptively reuse a building, you're really honoring the embodied carbon within the construction materials, and you're lowering the embodied carbon of the whole project. So that's really important if you're trying to be a leader in sustainability. And at the same time, by reusing existing buildings, you are taking the burden off virgin resources, because I mean, I know that circularity is a word that comes up a lot in my industry right now, but we're actually not doing too well in circularity at all. We're not doing too well in Australia. We're not doing too well in the world. If I have to put a number on it, I know that stats can be quite boring, but we're currently consuming more than 1.75 times the amount of resources that the planet system are able to naturally replenish. And the problem is that we don't have 1.75 planet Earths. So I guess that we should be trying to do something about that. And I know it's a bit of a paradox, because what really means is that to reduce the amount of resources that we're using, we need to build less. And set from a builder, that does sound a little bit of a paradox, but at the same time, what about just trying to make the best out of it and using buildings that are already there and doing something magic with it? And beside the whole sustainability stuff, I must say, I know it is a bit of a subjective part of it. I feel like when you're adaptively reusing a building, you're really creating buildings with a soul, with a history, and that is not something that can be replicated in new buildings. I'm sorry to say that, but every time someone comes and walks to our office, they're like, oh my God, what is this place? Because there is a character to it that you can only get from a building that has a previous history. So it's a very special way of building. And as I said, like, we're trying to do more and more of that here at Built, and we just started a new initiative called Brown to Grid. And it's about, again, like taking all these heritage buildings within Sydney CBD and Melbourne CBD and transforming it into new commercial buildings. And we literally just announced that with Investa. So that's going to be a fun adventure for us.
Wow, that does sound really exciting, because I think that you're right in terms of just touching base for those that are listening and aren't familiar with the circular economy. I'm going to try and explain it to you simply over audio, which I usually do with a graphic. So let's see how this goes. So circular economy is sort of a different way of thinking about things from a linear economy. So if you think that we dig up resources from the earth, we make stuff into them, we use it, and then when it's over, we throw it in landfill, and that's what they call a linear economy. The circular economy is around, if we're going to extract resources from the earth, trying to keep them in use for as long as possible, so that we can have those eternally moving around the circle. So just like Filomena said, at the moment, we're currently pulling out 1.75 Earths on a global scale, Australia is much worse than that every year. And then we sort of use them and then dump them away. So it's around, how do we get this back in balance in this great circle of life, in this great world that we live in, to ensure that what we're pulling out from the earth can actually regenerate, so that the people who want to do the same thing in the next generation have the same options that we do today. Which sounds like a dream almost, really, except for the fact that this is how the biology of the earth and biogeometrics of the earth have been wondering for years, right? This is how
Yes.
Earth normally operates.
Yes.
So in nature, there is no waste.
Absolutely.
So,
we should stop talking about, we should stop using the word waste altogether, but it's a very hard one. Like, if you just look at waste as a resource, you can really get crafty. But right now, there are a lot of reasons for not doing that. So yeah, I mean, like, there's some people who just like put their hands up and they're like, oh no, this is too hard. And some people were trying to take on that opportunity. And I think that's the approach that we want to take.
I think part of that process is it's talking about adaptive reuse and being able to reuse things. So like you said, you spoke about the substation project. So obviously the shell of the building's still there, some of the structural integrity was still there, and then you sort of work with that. So rather than doing the whole, let's just knock it to the ground and put something fresh on top of it, you go, okay, well, we've already got a shell, we've already got some structure there. How can we work with that to get a really good commercial space out of this? And I think you've done that really well in the substation project. But there are other projects where and I've seen this sort of happen overseas, where they go, actually, I only need a building here for 5 years, and then I actually want to take it down and move it somewhere else, because the whole site, the community development that we've got, we actually need to reuse it for something else. So it then begs the question of, can you build a building and then take it down and put it up somewhere else? So in my brain, I'm moving towards like Lego or like a Mikado set, where you sort of build something and then take it away and then put it together somewhere else. And in the construction industry, they'll call that design for disassembly.
Yeah,
so it's like, how can you actually take that apart? But in reality, though, like, not Legoland, how does that work? Like, what are you guys doing in that space?
So we're exploring a few things. Funny enough, I'm actually working on a project that sounds very much like we just described, Hayley. I'm working on a project that is going to be taken apart in a few years. And that, plus all this talk about circularity and the conversations that we're having with our industry leaders, is really making us think about what can we do in terms of design for disassembly. And I'm going to start by the negative part of it, meaning that it's a bit of a losing argument, because you're trying to retain the value of the construction materials for as long as you can by trying to convince clients, hey, at the end of this building's first life cycle, there is a second and third life cycle beyond that. And you can take advantage of that by taking all these different pieces apart and either reselling them or reusing them. So again, like, it's all about that value retention. And the reason why I'm saying it's a bit of a losing argument is because you're trying to make them say 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because there are not a lot of buildings that are going to be disassembled within 5 years. That's a really short time horizon. But for everything else, yeah, it's a bit of a longer time horizon. So it's definitely a challenge for us to make them see the value of that. However, a bit we're trying to explore the concept of putting together a designs for disassembly plan. So the same way where you go to IKEA, you have the bookshelf and you have step by step how you're going to put that together. If you can flick that over and have a manual that tells you how you can take the building apart, and if the manual get given to developers and building owners, maybe 20, 30 years from now, they are going to take on the opportunity of using the building as material banks and using the individual materials for something else without producing any waste. So we're really exploring that idea and the concept that at the end of a project, after project completion, the same way we need to deliver our manuals, our warranties, all the manufacturing information and so on. What if that comes also with a design for disassembly plan? So that's something that we've been working on. And yeah, we really believe in this. We also think that probably if the government had some better policies to impose this for all new construction, it would be really beneficial. And 50 years from now, people would really be able to take these materials and do something with it, which would be great. That's the goal.
Yeah. And I suppose there's probably a few people out there thinking that just seems like completely unrealistic. Like, you know, it's fun to say that my little Lego
It's
thing on
been
my
done.
table size thing, I can put that. Nobody packs the Lego away properly, you know, all that fun stuff that's happening there. But I suppose to give a really good example of that, I just came back from the Netherlands, and they do design for disassembly for bridges. So there actually is a bridge library. Where if your bridge in your town happens to get too small for what you need it to be, or it might be too big and you're downsizing, they just take your bridge away, and you can actually go to a place where there's just all these stored bridges. So you can actually get a secondhand bridge and just reassemble it in your town for what you need, and replace your old bridge with a new one. But there's no deconstruction. It's literally disassembly. It goes away to the library, and you can buy a new one from the catalogue of bridges that are currently sitting there and coming back. And so realistically, if they can do it for something as enormous as, and, you know, engineeringly structured as a bridge, things are quite easy in comparison of sort of being able to do that. And I kind of love the idea that there's going to be this paddock somewhere with all of these buildings that aren't being used at the moment.
Yeah,
that you can literally walk up to and go, I need that one.
That's it. And also, like, you know, for people who say that that's unrealistic, I just want to point out the fact that somehow this is already happening. Like, if you go on Google Maps and you look for secondhand material hubs, so many places are going to pop up because the opportunity is there. Like, you know, all these secondhand materials can be reused over and over again. We just need to be a little bit more systematic about it, and this process needs to be formalized a lot more, for sure. But yeah, no, absolutely. This has already been done. This is not a fairy tale.
I actually know someone who works in a resource recovery center, and his comment to me was, he goes, I don't understand why anyone buys anything new. There's all this great stuff just sitting there that people are just waiting to pick up and reuse. I could build like an entire house out of just stuff from my local recycling depot. So, you know, for all of those who whinge about, I can't afford to do my renovations, I can't afford to do this, like, there's all of these places out there that have just got amazing second, third, fourth life products that have been going around as well. And you go, great, it's tried, it's tested, I know it's going to work, I can reuse that, it's sitting there waiting to be taken up. So definitely reach out and do those. And I suppose the other, these things don't happen in isolation, right? Like you talk about there about saying we need the resource hubs there so that you can tap into them. We need to have the right policies in place so you can do that. The clients that you're getting all of your gigs from have to be on board with reusing a building rather than knocking down and rebuilding. So there's a lot of things that need to line up through that supply chain. So, and I suppose there's never going to be a perfect scenario for this. So what are we going to do in terms of, what tips can you offer, I suppose, in terms of how to make this happen?
I hope I'm not being unoriginal, but I want everyone to know that if you're really interested in making sustainability happen and circularity happen, you just got to get started. And I'm also going to give you some tough love here. No one is going to come to you with a perfect solution on a silver plate, so you should not be waiting for it. I do understand that it's scary because investing time and resources in some initiatives that are a bit of a maybe, they're not like certain, you don't know exactly how it's going to go. Not everyone can afford that, but you don't have to do necessarily big things. Like, for instance, at Build, we started something called a circular economy transformation plan, and we just created 3 columns, like what are the things that we can do on our own, things that we can do with partners, and things that we need to wait on the industry to kind of lead, and just put down some ideas and try to pursue them without asking for perfection, because you're probably not going to get that. And don't get me wrong, there are probably a lot of times where we're spending time having conversations that are not going to lead anywhere. But if one of these 100 ideas is going to get us to an excellent opportunity, I want to be part of that. And we should all strive to do that. And yeah, and if you want to have these conversations, you can also reach out to me. I'm always very keen to talk about imperfect solutions. But yeah, we definitely need some more and more imperfect solutions out there so that we can take significant steps towards circularity. Because as I said, no 1.7 planet Earth out there. So let's be careful, you know?
Yeah. And I also think as a company name, you're already perfectly positioned to work in this space because you're working with things that are already built, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So rebuilding things, repurposing things, maximizing the value out of the resources that we already have. It's going to be the next wave. And I think that's sort of where a lot of the leading developers are really heading in this space, no matter whether it's buildings, whether it's, you know, heavy industry construction, whether it's throughout manufacturing and working in a bunch of different areas. This is really tapping into the benefits of a circular economy. And you touched on briefly at the start, you say things, I know it sounds counterproductive because a builder wants to build new things all the time. To actually say, no, we need to build less. It's not actually building less, it's building smarter. There's always going to be builders out there. There's always going to be need for reconstruction and repairs and sort of really sort of adapting for those things that when they do eventually wear out, to replace certain bits of it. So I think that for everyone out there in the industry who's scared that this might mean build less, that's not the case. It's going to be build smarter and get on board with the new way of building. And so I hope everybody gets on that bandwagon. And like you said, collaborate, get on board. And hopefully people will reach out to you and sort of get through and join you on that journey. So that's the end of our chat for today. So Filomena, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Hayley. This was a lot of fun. And as I said, if anyone wants to reach out to me, please do so. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit everywhere. So yeah, looking forward to have some good, productive conversations with everyone.
Amazing. And thank you everyone for listening to the People Planet Profit podcast. Until our next episode, goodbye.